Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my July wrap-up. So first, I'm going to apologize for my voice. I definitely feel, at least for me, it sounds really off, and that is because I have been sick with a cold lately. I took some days off, so there was no video last Thursday because I just wanted to like relax and not have to worry about that, especially since at that time when I should have filmed this, I was really congested and it was just not going to be good. I was not able to like focus on anything. But I do have all of my July books to talk about today, which also was the Indie Accords Readathon, so most of these books are going to be indie books, and that means a lot of them are going to be ebooks as well, so I don't have like a lot of physical books to show you, but we are definitely going to talk about them. So starting with my stats, I did read 20 books in the month of July, and that was a total of 4,151 pages. For the format of the books, I read 2 arcs, 2 audiobooks, 2 physical books, and 14 ebooks. For the age group of the books, I read 2 middle grade, 7 young adult, 2 new adult, and 9 adult titles. And then a stat that I was not tracking previously, but I started tracking for this readathon and decided, yeah, I'm definitely going to be tracking this in the future, is traditional published versus indie published. So in the month of July, I actually read 7 traditionally published books. That means either through big fives or publishers that make quite a bit of money, slash also publish quite a few titles throughout the year. And then I read 13 titles that were indie or self-published. So this could have been self-published books or books that are published by smaller publishers, boutique publishers, that kind of thing. And so percentage-wise, I read 35% traditional and 65% indie in this month, which is almost the opposite of what I've done throughout the year so far. I looked at my stats just because I was curious, and I actually read about 75% traditionally published books throughout the year so far, so from January through July. So I read quite a few more indie than I normally would, and that is something I want to do more because I have quite a bit on my like e-reader especially. I want to make sure that I'm reading indie books throughout the year. Now for my star ratings, I did have 2 DNFs, 3 3 stars, 1 3.5 star, 7 4 stars, 1 4.5 stars, and 6 5-star reads. And because we're doing the same thing that I have been doing for the whole year so far, we're going to start with the lowest rated books for me personally, and then move up to my favorite book of the month. So the first book that I DNF'd this month was Love in an Undead Age by A.M. Jeever. This is a book that I specifically actually purchased and downloaded as an ebook for the Indie Accords Readathon. One of the prompts that we needed to do was a dystopian book, and because I was the team captain for romance, I wanted to make sure my dystopian had a heavy romance focus. And I had never heard of this book before, but when I was looking up self-published indie like dystopian romance stuff, this is what popped up, and it had like a high 4 point something stars on Goodreads. There's nothing necessarily bad about this book, but it was definitely not something for me. I only got to like, oh goodness, like 14% of the way through. I could be wrong on that. I don't have my actual like stats in front of me for that specifically. But basically what this was supposed to be is a zombie apocalypse type of story. This is after the zombie apocalypse happened, like I think a few years later, and we follow a main character who is, you know, part of a community trying to survive, and then there is supposed to be some sort of love stuff happening. We did have some zombie scenes, which actually were quite good and quite gory. My biggest issue with this is that I wasn't seeing any romance yet. We weren't really getting good character development between other characters. Like, it was okay, but it wasn't amazing. And also, this book is set in Santa Clara College, I think that's what it is, and that is a very heavy Jesuit college apparently, which I believe, I had to look it up because I wasn't entirely sure. It is Christian or Catholic, and so the Jesuits there have a priest, or I don't know the terminology specifically for it, but they have people there that are part of the church that are in charge of the college and seem to be a high political faction almost in this dystopian world, and so everything was related to the Jesuits, and I just was not into that. I didn't know we were going to be getting that with it, and I was just tuning out the entire time. And then I did, because I decided to DNF this, I did look up, like, not necessarily spoilers, a little bit of spoilers, but there were people saying that there was going to be a love triangle, and I did get the hints of that at the beginning, like, through the stuff that I read. But one of the characters that's going to be in the love triangle is a guy who is already married. And I didn't know how that was going to work, but I wasn't into that either. And so I was like, yeah, once I looked that up especially, it just was not for me. The second book that I DNF'd is Rhea and the Blood of the Nectar by Payal Doshi. This one is a middle grade Indian fantasy, and I actually really liked the start of this book. I actually got like 44% of the way through this one before I decided to DNF, because the beginning, we definitely get a lot of like the Indian culture and like where our main character Rhea's mom works, and like there was so much stuff going on and so much, like, I don't want to necessarily say world building because we are, you know, it's in our world, but I loved seeing that kind of stuff. However, the actual like characters and fantasy plot did not do it for me. Rhea is our main character, and she is just, I don't know how to describe her exactly, but all of her decisions, she'll think of like what she should do, and then she decides not to do it. So like everything that she is doing is based on the fact that she wants to do the opposite of what the proper thing to do would be. She also has a best friend who is not her friend apparently, even though she's helping her do all this kind of stuff in the book, but she's very mean to her. Like, she assumes that everybody is against her, and part of that is because she has a twin brother named Rohan, and her family 100% like prefers him. Like, you can just tell her mother and her grandmother give him so much like benefit of the doubt, and they're always treating him better than her. Like, she can do nothing right and he can do nothing wrong, and it was very heavily handed with that, which I did not appreciate, because like the mother and the grandmother are trying to tell her that they love her and all this kind of stuff, but the way that they treat her, I can understand a little bit of why she is so standoffish with everyone else, but at the same time it was so heavy-handed that I was just like, do we really need this? When we eventually get into the fantasy storyline, it took too long to start, first of all. I wasn't really into going into the fantasy world by the time we got there, because like it was taking forever to get there, but then our bad guy is like the queen of the land, and we got to see her a bit before I DNF'd it, but everything for her motivation is just evil for the sake of being evil. I do not see a reason for anything, and so by the time I got to like 44% of the way, I was just already done with the book, and I didn't want to push myself to finish it. The writing style, however, was not bad. It was just those things adding up together made me just like, it turned me off from the book. Then, for my 3 stars, the first one I have here is Remina by Junji Ito. This is actually one of the books that I hauled this month. I did a way too big book haul in July. And so I read this like on July 31st because I was like, you know what? I need to read something that is going to take a book off of my TBR. And so this is one of the only Junji Ito's I have not read yet so far. It is one of the shorter ones. It is not a short story collection. It is a full story, and I gave it 3 stars. The reason for that is I go into Junji Ito expecting horror, and while this did have some horror elements, it definitely read more as like a sci-fi, and I don't mind the sci-fi either. The actual premise of it is very interesting. Basically, this rogue planet called Remina comes into the sky over Earth, and it has been sort of eating other planets in the solar system, and people start panicking, thinking that this planet is then going to consume the Earth, and there is a girl whose name is also Remina, and they think, you know, she is tied to it, and stuff goes from there. Basically, the biggest reason that this is a 3-star, one, besides not having enough horror, like I really wanted more from it, is every single person on Earth, basically minus a couple people, panic because of this planet being in the sky and decide to take it out on the girl Remina, and they want to go like on a killing spree trying to find her to kill her. And it's so unbelievable to me that every single person would do this, and it could be a little bit more believable if there was a reason for it. The thing is, it does not appear that there was a reason from like this planet being in the sky to cause the people to act that way. It was 100% the people's reaction to this planet being in the sky, the potential of an apocalypse sort of thing, to blame her and go after her. And so a lot of the story was focused on that kind of aspect and not the horror aspect. I did think the sci-fi aspect, because it does have a little bit of more of like the science stuff in there, could have been very interesting. It might have needed to be a longer book for that. So while it's not a bad book per se, it's not my favorite Junji Ito whatsoever. Then another 3 stars is Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. Now this one, 3 stars for me means it's fine. Nothing super good, nothing super bad. And me going into this book, I knew what I was getting myself into. This is an erotica book. However, I started using Hoopla for my library to like listen to audiobooks and things like that, and that's how I listened to this one. I just saw it on there. It was something that I was curious about, and I'm technically more curious about other books and characters in the series, but I'm one of those people that even if it's a companion series or companion novels, I do like to start at the beginning, if I can, to then continue the series. And I just don't think this one necessarily is for me. I will say the sex scenes are very, very hot. They're very well written, but this does have like that daddy baby girl kink thing that I just don't think is really my thing. But I was also looking for more plot and more character development and more romance, and I don't think that is necessarily going to be this series. Like that, I knew what I was getting into. However, in order for me to give it a higher rating, I need those things. I will say I did actually really like the ending. There was a part in the ending with character development, especially because this is a Jasmine Jafar type of story. I did like the ending because I was not expecting it to happen, and there was a character development thing, like I said, that I was surprised by, but like pleasantly surprised. I was happy for it. And again, this book is not like bad or anything like that. I have talked to one of my friends that has read more in this series, and they did say maybe I should try one book like more from characters that I actually am like wanting to potentially read from, just because there's not like a ton of world building that puts all of the books together. It's more individual, like actual companion novel stuff, and if I really don't love that next book, this is probably just not the series for me. And I definitely agree with that. Like I knew what I was getting into when I started it, but I wanted to try it anyway. And then my other 3-star read is Along for the Ride by Mimi Grace. This was actually my team read for the Indie Accords. I was the one that picked this, and it was not exactly what I thought it was going to be. This one is supposed to be a contemporary romance with a road trip, and the road trip aspect of the storyline only really goes for about half, maybe a third of the book, and then it goes into more than that, where they sort of try to figure out if they want to be in a relationship. This is definitely one of those sort of like maybe rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers type of stories, because especially at the beginning of the book, they do not get along. And the thing is, they have reasons not to get along. Their personalities are so different. Like I could not stand our main female character because especially at the beginning, actually through most of the book, she doesn't really have much character growth. She's very narcissistic and selfish, and everything is about her. She doesn't see how her actions impact others. So I was like, you guys have reasons to not like each other because your personalities do not go together. But they end up having to share a bed one night on the road trip, and they didn't just sleep in the bed. They decided to do more than that, and so their romance ends up being more sexual. If they miss each other, they're actually missing each other's bodies, and they mention that multiple times, like, oh, you know, you're so handsome, I missed you, or your member, that kind of thing. And that's definitely not what I was expecting going in the story. Again, the writing style is actually pretty good. It was just not what I expected. I was really expecting more romance and development of feelings compared to lust, but that is what we got. Moving into the 3.5 stars I have Nomen Omen Volume 1, Total Eclipse of the Heart by Marco B. Bucci. I might have been pronouncing that incorrectly. This is a graphic novel. I think it's actually a comic bind-up series that, again, I downloaded off of Hoopla to read. I've been starting to do my library app more with audiobooks and comics and graphic novels, things that I want to try out before I buy them. And this one is very weird and interesting, and I don't actually know fully where it's going yet, which is why it's a 3.5 stars. However, the art style, There's actually multiple art styles in this. It changes based on like the point of view character and what's going on in the story, and it's very intriguing. It's very dark, very mature, so like it's not rated for teens, but it has like stuff to do with demons and devils and old gods, and actually I don't even know if they classify themselves as any of those, but it follows one girl who ends up one night having her heart like stolen from her body, but she is still alive. There's some sort of magic stuff going on. I actually don't know much about it because it's one of those ones where the first volume leaves you wanting more, which is a good thing. They do actually, I think, have the entire series through my library app on Hoopla, so I'm going to read more. I'll probably read at least volume 2 this month and see what's going on with that. But the art style is definitely very intriguing because, like I said, it switches up styles multiple times. They're all gorgeous and beautiful, but it switches it up based on who we're actually following in the story and what's going on. But yeah, magic and otherworldly stuff is going on. I don't actually know like specifically what's going on, but I need to read more. Moving into my bunch of 4-star reads, the first one I have here is Taproot by Keezy Young. So this is a graphic novel. It's actually a pretty short graphic novel. It is LGBTQ, it has paranormal elements. It's basically about a ghost named Blue who can only be seen by a florist named Hamal, and it is their story of, you know, trying to figure out necromancy stuff almost. Like, it's very weird, it's very heartwarming, but it is quite short. It's only like 127 pages, and so I was really wanting the development to be a little bit more in there, but in order to do that it really would have had to been a longer book. But I really like the art style, and it was a really quick, cute story. Then the next one I read is Pilu of the Woods by Mai K. Wen. This is a middle grade graphic novel about a little girl named Willow who runs away from home, goes into the woods, and finds this like wood nymph almost who is lost, and she decides to take her back home, and this girl wood nymph's name is Pilu, and it is about love and family and friends and grief, and it's quite heartwarming. It is, you know, it's a middle grade graphic novel. The art style is really, really cute. Again, not a full 5 stars. There just wasn't like a thing to make me want it to be a 5 stars, but it was really, really adorable. It also had a recipe in the back for mushroom rice, which is like a theme thing in this book that they talk about multiple times, and my husband and I actually made it. It's really, really, really good. But yeah, this is just a cute middle grade graphic novel. I really did like the aspect of like the emotions and family and that kind of stuff. Another 4 stars is The Last Witch issue 1 by Connor McCreary. I actually did read issues 1, 2, and 3 this month, and I gave issue number 1 a 4 stars, and I gave issues 2 and 3 a 5 stars. So we're gonna actually talk about them all together because they're issues. They're bigger issues than some like comics. These are actually all, I think, like 40 or 42 pages, whereas I think most comics are like in the high 20s, low 30s. But yeah, it started off really solid, which is why it's a 4 stars, and then I got addicted, which is why the other 2 are 5 stars. So basically this is a witch story, The Last Witch, and it follows a character named Saoirse who lives in, I believe, in Ireland, but like an Ireland where people know there are witches and things like that. I do believe some of this story is based on some Irish mythology. I don't know for sure, but it actually gets quite dark, especially in the second issue. The first one ends on a cliffhanger, and it takes you right into the action. It's basically about these like witches who are known for like kidnapping and eating children, and then our main character of Saoirse finds out that she could be the witch to defeat them. So yeah, it was really, really fun. Again, I love the art style, and I definitely need to read more in this series. Then we have Persuasion by Jamin Eve and Jane Washington. This is the second book in the Curse of the Gods series, which is a paranormal, new adult, reverse harem romance. We get more romance in the second book than in the first book, and I'm assuming gonna get more even in the third one. But yeah, this is a really, really fun series, very much focused on the fantasy world currently, where we have souls who are like the upper class citizens who, when they die, could be potential gods. And then we have dwellers who are the lower class citizens who will never achieve anything, basically, and they live only to serve the souls. And we follow our main character of Willa, who is a dweller, but is not exactly a dweller. Like, she is the exception to a lot of things. She gets taken in by a group of souls called the Abcurse Brothers, and everything goes from there. She is very clumsy, and she makes very bad decisions sometimes, and the reason this is a 4 stars still is she's one of those characters where sometimes I find it a little unbelievable, the things that she does or the things that she says. Like, she goes off on tangents so much, like somebody, or like non sequiturs, that's what it is. Somebody will be talking about one thing and she'll literally just go like, and it's like, where did we come from with that there? And the thing is, we're in this book in her head, so like, we as the reader should almost have a like, here's what she heard and this is where her mind went, so like that's why we know she's answering that way. We don't get that. But, you know, it's just a little bit of like the logical stuff that I feel like needed to be worked on a little bit. However, the romance is getting in there, and I'm very excited to see where it's going to go. It is a really, really fun read, and I've been reading all of these as buddy reads with Lana from Lore and Lullabies. I will leave her link down below. I've actually read the first 2 books previously, so this was a reread. Still a 4 stars, still fun. I gave it 4 stars previously as well. And then this next month, we're supposed to read the 3rd one. So that'll be new stuff for me, but I'm very excited to try it out. Then my next 4 stars was The Hunger Pains by Chelsea Field. This is the sequel to Eat, Pray, Die, which I read a few months ago, and that one I gave 4.5 stars. This one I'm giving 4 stars. The main reason is because the actual like mystery that happens in this book didn't quite capture me as much. Like, I was still intrigued and I was curious about like who did it, because there was a murder, like a full-on murder in this one. And I did love the fact that we have our main character of Isabel. I absolutely love her. She's snarky and sarcastic and like really, really humorous, and I love her like as a character and her relationships with other people. But the actual mystery in this one, I liked how she dealt with it, but the whole like reveal of what happened, I don't know, I feel like there wasn't enough breadcrumbs leading us to that answer as a reader. Like, I do understand, like, okay, yeah, that could happen and that could be why it was, but there wasn't enough to actually give me, oh yeah, okay, I believe that that's what happened. Whereas in the first book, we didn't have like a full-on murder, we had a poisoning, but the actual answer of who did what, I was like, okay, if I was gonna reread this again, I'm sure I could pick out exactly like from A to Z where we went. But in this one, it just wasn't as believable. And I mean, it's a humorous mystery with a little bit of romance thrown in. It doesn't have to necessarily be like super believable, but I was wishing for a little bit more of like how it was in the first book with that lead up to like the actual reveal. My next 4 star, I do actually have a physical copy of it because I purchased the physical copy, but I listened to it on audiobook through my Hoopla app, and that is going to be The Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This one, I have heard about it previously, like years ago, before TikTok got their hands on it. Like, I knew about this series. There's, I think, currently like 22 books out, and I think when I had first heard about it, there was only like maybe like 4, 5, or 6 books currently out. So this was a few years ago, and based on this cover, this looks like erotica, and the only thing that I had ever heard about it was, you know, blue aliens and like what their penis looks like. Like, literally, that's all I had ever heard about it. And so I was like, I don't think this is for me. Same thing with Desperate Measures. Like, I knew what I was getting into, and because I listened to Desperate Measures and didn't dislike it exactly, I was like, you know what? They have basically all of the audiobooks on my library app. I'm going to just try it out. I needed something, not necessarily mindless, but I was in the car, I was going somewhere, and I needed an audiobook to listen to. And so I was like, you know what? I listened to Desperate Measures. I don't think you can get any worse than that. We're gonna listen to this one. And let me tell you, even though it is quite short, this had a whole lot of plot. It had a whole lot of romance. And yes, it is quite sexy. The sex scenes are well written. But it had more things than I originally thought going in. And so I was pleasantly surprised by this. I will say there are trigger warnings and content warnings for rape on page, and a forced abortion mentioned, and there is a part where it is non-consensual between our 2 main characters that, I mean, I do understand he is an alien, the social customs, and they do explain a little bit of like what he was feeling through certain things is going to be completely different than here on Earth with humans. However, it was a little bit squicky at that part. Our main character, who is a female who this is happening to, doesn't actually really mind, but the concept of that was like, did we really have to do that? I actually think that's the whole reason this is a 4-star instead of a 5, because if that did not happen, we have a whole plot line of like survival, trying to survive on this new planet that they crash land into. We have like the actual romance growing. We have so many things that I actually really, really enjoyed, but there is a non-consensual scene between our 2 main characters, and that really was one part that I was just like, did that have to be there? I don't think it actually did need to be there, but the rest of the series I am curious about as well, and because we now have the established plot and storyline and like relationship in this one, I don't think we're gonna have that kind of stuff going into the future books. We shall see. I actually did purchase the next 2 in this series, and I'm excited to try them out. However, I also might try them on audio. The audiobook of this was really, really well done. My last 4-star is A Court of Honey and Ash by Shannon Mayer and Kelly St. Clair. So this was our group read for the Indie Accords Readathon, and I actually really, really enjoyed this one. I know it was hit or miss with some people just because it does have like some romance plotline stuff, and it does seem to be written a little bit younger, like more YA, even though I probably would classify this as maybe like a new adult. I think our main character is like in her early 20s. It could be pushing into the adult territory, but I see where people are coming with the whole like, I felt like this could have just been a young adult book. But I do also feel like young adult books lately have a lot of characters that should have been aged up and just put into the adult category. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I really like this one. This one follows our main character of Allie, who is, I believe she's half fae, and we get thrown into the action from chapter 1. I was so into it, but something happens to the like the fae realm basically, and it shatters, and it's sort of her fault, and because of that she wants to take it upon herself to go figure out exactly what is going on. And there is a lot of fighting and not exactly like war stuff going on, but like backstabbing, and like there's so much going on. One thing I will say, it is so quick and fun to read. Like, I was so into it. I finished it in a couple days, but the romance specifically for me, I do feel like I wanted a little bit more development, because it does appear that some of the first initial potential development happened off page before we got there, and I don't like it when that happens as much, because I don't get to see the actual like progression of it. But I'm very, very excited to see more in this series, because like I said, the first book was a quick, fun read. Yeah, maybe not like my absolute favorite, but I'm not gonna say no to reading the rest of the books. Then my 4.5-star read is 40 Love by Olivia Dade. This is the, I think, second book technically in the There's Something About Marysburg series, but they are companion novels. You can read them in any order that you want, and this one is a like age gap romance, and I really, really enjoyed this one. It's also sort of like a summer romance, but it follows our main character of Tess, who is just turning 40, and she is on a summer vacation with her best friend, and she ends up losing her bikini top at the beach, and she ends up getting Lucas, who is like, I think he's 26 in this book, to help her out, because she is an assistant principal at a school and she does not want to be flashing anybody at the beach, getting into trouble at all, anything like that. And so it goes from there. He is a retired pro tennis player, and so they do talk about tennis a little bit, and this was just so sweet. I absolutely loved both of our characters. I love the fact that there are some issues that they have to like talk through in this book. I don't mind if there's like miscommunication and stuff, and there wasn't necessarily like miscommunication, but I do feel like once we're in romances with actual like adults, like once you're in your 20s or 30s, you should be able to have some conversations with your partner. It doesn't necessarily have to be like right away if the author wants to create tension or anything like that, but there needs to be more than just like waiting for people and like assuming things about others. Like, there needs to be conversations happening, and this one definitely handled that very well. It was also one that was quite sexy and very well written. Like, I absolutely loved it, and so I ended up buying the physical copies of the rest of the books in this series, which is just like one novel and one short story collection. I need to get a physical copy of this one eventually as well, but they were out of stock in my store, so I will wait and get that later. But it was very, very well done. Moving into my 5-star reads, the next two that I was going to talk about, but we already did, are The Last Witch, issues 2 and 3. And then the next one I read is What's Up, Beanie by Alina Taiso. This one I read as an e-arc, and I think it just came out at the beginning of August. This is a collection of comics from Alina Taiso. I actually follow her on Instagram. I think the actual Instagram handle is What's Up Beanie, and I absolutely love this one. It was one super cute art style, which I already knew because I follow her, but the actual stories in it are just some of them are just so relatable. Some of them I definitely was I used to do this as well, because it's stories from her childhood up to where she is an adult, and then other ones were just super funny. I definitely found myself laughing out loud multiple times, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. I do really want a second collection eventually, because the way it was put together was just perfect. The next one that's a 5 stars is Monstress Volume 1 Awakening by Marjorie M. Liu. This one I did actually read as an ebook through my Hoopla app, and I'm definitely going to need to get the physical copies eventually, but this is a comic series. This is the first volume in it, and this is another one that's a little bit weird, very hard to explain really, but we have a world where it appears to have humans, and I can't remember what they call them, but it's people that are also magic, and they have potential to have animal attributes, and there's a war brewing between these two factions that are, I think, currently separated by a wall, and our main character ends up with a piece of a mask that I think lets her see an old god. It is so weird. I can't even really get into it again more, because it's very similar to Nomen Omen in a way where I do not have answers. I don't know what's going on. I definitely need to read more in the series to know what is going on, but the art style is amazing. This is very gruesome, very mature, lots of death and dismemberment happening, but I am so intrigued by the premise, and I've heard some amazing things. This also has pretty good disability rep as well. That's another thing that made me interested in this series originally, is just that people absolutely love that, and I did like seeing that on page, so it's another series I definitely need to continue. Then I have A Trial of Sorcerers by Elise Kova. This is the first book in this series. I don't know what the series is called. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what the series is called, but it's the first book in this series, and yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is another one that I felt very quick to read, very easily engrossed me, and I need to continue in this series. This follows Ira. Pretty sure that's how it is pronounced. There is a passage in here somewhere that tells you how it's pronounced, and currently I can't remember if I'm saying it right. Ira. And she has water magic, but one thing that I absolutely love about this book and this series currently is the fact that it is elemental magic based. Some people have fire magic, some people have wind magic or air magic, but with the people that are the main characters especially, you can tell that there are differences in the magic per person. Her water magic is very much ice focused, and it is just so cool. This also has a lot of competitions in it, and I absolutely loved reading the competition aspect. This was so good. This had, I don't think it was the ending, but there was a part where I did not see it coming, and I just I did not believe that that's what we were doing. But then there was another part where it was going on for a little while, and I was predicting what was going to happen with it, and I got to a part where I was if it does not happen the way that I want it to happen, I'm going to be upset. It did happen the way I wanted it to happen, but I could have seen it going either way, and this is a book that I actually feel I need some people to read so I can talk to you about it, because I have theories and stuff going on with this, but it tore my heart out in such a way that I'm just it consumed me. That's what happened. It consumed me. I need to read more in this series. It's not out yet, but I really enjoyed this one, which is good because I read a different Elise Kova earlier this year. I believe it was the A Deal with the Elf King, and I only gave that 3.5 stars. I think because it was supposed to be more of an adult fantasy romance, whereas this one is definitely more YA, just fantasy. There is some romance in it, but it is more focused on the magic and competition aspect, and yeah, stuff happened that blew my mind basically. I did not see it coming, and I loved this one. And then my last book, my favorite book of the month, is Our Bloody Pearl by D.N. Bryn. So this one has pirates and sirens, and again, this one is very, very bloody. I absolutely loved it. I loved the like found family aspect in this one as well. And this one has so much diversity. We had characters that use they, them pronouns. Our author actually is non-binary as well, and so I just really loved the representation we had for that. We have characters with disabilities. We have characters on the LGBTQ spectrum, all this kind of stuff. Like, I was just so enthralled with the actual storytelling and the found family aspect and that kind of stuff in it, but I loved the fact that we also had all this diversity in there. I will say, I went into this one expecting romance because on Goodreads it actually does specify as like one of the top tags on there that it has romance, but those are user generated and I would not call this book a romance whatsoever. The closest that we get to a romance is like two side characters who are already in a relationship at the beginning of the book, like before we even start the book. So there's no actual like romance or even a romance subplot, but I absolutely love this one. The writing style was beautiful. I just fell in love with like every single character in it. The action was great. It was very, like I said, bloody and gory. Oh, so good. There also is a sequel slash companion novel to this one that came out at the end of July. I have not started it yet, but I'm like dying to, called Once Stolen, and I believe it follows a different siren as the main character, and so I'm just very curious to see about that one as well. But I absolutely love that one so much. The cover also is one of my like favorite covers of the year. It's just so cool. I love it so much. So yeah, favorite book of July. And that is everything for July now. Like I said, most of these were ebooks and indie books, which I need to do and make sure I'm doing more of throughout the year. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos up Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!